Hi everyone. All right, let's start your review for the cell quiz. So, two important words we need to know from the get-go: structure and function. Structure is how something is made. Function is the job that it has. Remember, in nature, so often the way something is built, its structure, has to do with its function, what job it has. Structure and function are related. The way something is built is going to help it do its job, and we see that in nature all the time. Alright, now that we have both of those words in mind, let's jump right into talking about cells. A normal body cell or a plant cell both have organelles. Organelles are those tiny things inside of the cells that make the cell work. They all have different jobs, and they help the cell accomplish the different functions that it has. So our official definition for organelles are: they are tiny structures, they're inside the cell, and they help keep the cell working correctly. You can see we have a lot here. So let's just start on the outside with the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a bilayer. It has two layers here. It has a layer of fat and a layer of protein, a layer of lipids and a layer of protein. All these little things right here, these little balls with tails, remember, those are our lipids. We have a lot of lipids. We have two layers of them, actually. That's why we have a bilayer when it comes to the cell membrane. We also have protein. The proteins are what allow things to come in and out of the cell. We have these integral proteins that go all the way through, and then we have some peripheral proteins that are just on the outside or inside. But mostly our cell membrane is made up of both lipids and proteins, and a cell membrane controls the movement of things in and out of the cell. Right, inside the cell, one of the most important organelles. It holds your DNA, it holds my DNA, it holds all the DNA, is the nucleus. The nucleus holds all of our genetic material, our DNA. And by holding this DNA, it holds all the information, and therefore it controls everything that's happening in the cell. And much like the cell, the nucleus has a double membrane that protects the DNA. It has a double membrane around it. Here we can see it here in the center of the cell. Here's all the DNA inside and the double membrane that goes around it. Alright, something else that we're going to find a lot of in the cell is the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the space inside of the cell that is not an organelle. It is just this jelly-like material that kind of cushions and protects all the other organelles. It's also where all the chemical reactions are happening for the cell. Another key organelle, another super important organelle, is the mitochondria. Mitochondria is where respiration happens. Remember, respiration is one of our properties of life, and it happens in this organelle. Respiration is when we turn nutrients into energy, and we need to remember this chemical formula. Glucose, which is C6H12O6 plus oxygen, gives us CO2, H2O, and ATP. ATP is energy. It's our body's energy. This organelle creates this energy, ATP, out of the food that we eat. Because of that, we nickname it the powerhouse of the cell. It creates all the power for the cell. Besides mitochondria, the other organelle that makes things are ribosomes. Ribosomes make proteins. They're like little factories. Look at this little factory of a ribosome just making proteins, licking these amino acids. Now, ribosomes make proteins by getting instructions from the nucleus. It gets instructions from the nucleus, and the instructions that are sent to it are the mRNA. mRNA is the messenger RNA. This is the message that the nucleus sends to the ribosome, and it uses this mRNA to build the proteins and amino acid at a time. Now, these ribosomes could be free-floating, or they could be attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, or, if you're lazy like me, rough ER. Alright, now an opposite of building would be destroying, right? And we have one organelle that does that, the lysosome. The lysosome recycles old parts of the cell. Anything that's old or broken, it uses catalytic enzymes to break apart these broken parts, these broken proteins, these broken organelles. And what it usually does, it absorbs it first. And then you can see here in this picture, the inside of a lysosome has these hydrolytic enzyme mixtures, and these usually tear things apart. Alright, let's keep going. We're doing pretty good. We're almost done with all the organelles. Next up, we've got the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus can modify proteins, but it cannot build them. Golgi body does not build. What it does, it moves things. It's that good friend that comes over that helps move a couch, or a good friend that helps come over and move things around, or helps you move to a new apartment. All the Golgi body does is move things. It can modify things a little bit. It modifies proteins from the ribosomes, and it'll really just move them after that. It moves the proteins where they need to go. Think about it like Amazon. Amazon doesn't build a TV from scratch. They send you the TV already made. Alright, let's get into some organelles that are really more plant-based, like the cell wall. The cell wall is mainly found in plant cells. It's made from cellulose, and it's an extra layer of protection. Cell membranes still exist in plant cells, but they have this additional protection, right? The plants have a cell wall. It's just extra protection to keep the cell safe. Again, we only find this really in plant cells. We also really only find chloroplasts in plant cells. Now, some bacteria do have chloroplasts, but they're few and far between. Mostly plant cells are the ones that have chloroplasts. Now, chloroplasts are really important. This is where photosynthesis happens. That means a lot of cells that are in the leaves of plants will have lots of chloroplasts. These chloroplasts absorb light energy. Now, we always think about photosynthesis, we turn light into food, but that's really not what's happening. Please know the chemical formula. For photosynthesis, we're taking CO2 and water. And we're taking that light from the sun, and it's powering the chemical reaction. The light powers the chemical reaction, and it turns CO2 and water into C6H12O6, which is glucose, and oxygen. Usually this glucose, C6H12O6, will then go to a mitochondria after it's done being created in a chloroplast. Whew. That's all the organelles. So, let's keep going to our next subject. We talked about the cell membrane earlier. It's important to think about what happens on the cell membrane. Remember, we talked about things go in and things go out of the cell through the cell membrane. Now, that has a specific name, and that is diffusion. Diffusion is the movement in and out of cells. Things move from a high concentration to a low concentration. And this movement keeps happening until things are equal on both sides. We're going from high to low, and it's going to keep happening until both sides are equal. Now, the specific diffusion of water into and out of a cell is called osmosis. Osmosis is a very specific type of diffusion. We also have hypertonic and hypotonic solutions. Hypertonic solutions are where we have more solutes in the solution than inside of the cell. Hypotonic solutions are when we have more solutes inside of the cell than outside of the cell. These words are easily confused, and I recommend looking over these definitions just a few more times before the quiz. Alright, we're just about out of time, so let's skip to the last part here, which are specialized cells. Not all cells are like the cells I just showed you. Cells can be specialized. That means the structure is going to change because that structure is going to be there for a specific function. For example, blood cells. Blood cells are round, perfectly round, so they can easily travel through veins, capillaries, and arteries. They also don't really have a lot of organelles. They don't even have a nucleus once they're mature because they're making room for hemoglobin, which is a protein that has a lot of iron in it. This hemoglobin carries oxygen. It can carry up to 4 oxygen molecules at once, and it is what allows the red blood cell to carry oxygen. Muscle cells are another type of specialized cell. That's an example. They're not round at all. They're kind of long and string-like. They have lots of mitochondria to power muscles. These muscle cells also have a protein that allow the cells to slide over each other. This is what allows for muscle contraction. And the proteins kind of keep everything in one place so the muscle fibers all contract at once and not all at different times. All right, two more specialized cells, I'm sorry. The nerve cell. The nerve cell has long and skinny arms, which is great for sending messages, like from your brain to different parts of your body. Now, these nerve cells have something called myelin tissue or myelin sheath. It is a fatty sheath that protects these long arms. Otherwise, the messages being sent could be lost before they get to the end of the arm. This myelin tissue insulates the cell and it speeds up the nerve impulse. It prevents the nerve impulse from being lost while being sent through the nerve arm. And finally, we have root cells. Root cells have a large surface area, so they have a larger amount of contact with soil water. They have these root or finger-like processes attached to them. We call them root hairs. They're part of the cell. And you can see, even in this picture, the cell wall is very thin around this root hair. And this allows for the absorption of extra water and mineral ions from the soil. You'll also notice that this cell has no chloroplast. And that's because the cell's underground. It wouldn't need chloroplast. What it does need is a large vacuole. And that allows the root cell to absorb all these water and minerals from the soil. And that's it. You guys, I know that was fast. I went through a lot of information. If you need to watch this again, watch it again. Good luck on your quiz, and I'll see you all tomorrow.